So we're going to go through Myanmar USP's practical info on weather, visa, transport, border crossings, and cruising, and then just a intro on experiences in hotels in what's called the Big Five: Yangon, Mandalay, Bagan, and Napoli Beach. What's new, and a little bit on responsible tourism. For those not at all familiar with Myanmar, here's just a little map. Yangon is right here. That's the largest city, which we'll go through briefly. Bagan is the temple haven area, which you've seen quite a lot of pictures. Mandalay, where the ancient capitals are. Then the INLE lake region, that's the lake region that's considered a highlight. And then the Napoli beach region is down here. And then the MERGUI archipelago is a southern area that shares the border with Thailand. So off to the west, it shares borders with India and Bangladesh. And then to the north, China, and then over to the east, Laos and Thailand. Primarily, Myanmar is a Buddhist region. Around 54 million people currently reside, and it has 135 ethnic groups. So EXO Myanmar has been operating there since 1995. So we are one of the largest running DMCs in Myanmar for the past 25 years. Just generally, you probably know a little bit an idea of some USPs of Myanmar, but a lot of well-traveled people want to go there as something different, something more authentic, something more unique, and Myanmar certainly doesn't disappoint when it comes to that. You know, with some other regions, it takes quite a lot of strings to pull and product development to get that authenticity, where Myanmar, it can be delivered quite easily, just to be completely honest. It's a little harder to travel around, which I'll explain, but it's very unspoiled, very, very authentic, slightly less traveled, but it's still, you know, a safe place that you can travel with a range of accommodation with high standards as well. Quick note, I'm not going to go through this in detail throughout the presentation, but I do just want to let you know that we have an adventure team in Myanmar. So any of our teams can do, you know, soft trekking and light biking, but if you do ever have anything with multiple day treks, multiple day bikes, we do have a specialist team that offers that. So like I said, we won't go into it in this presentation, but it's more of just an FYI for you that Myanmar does have a lot to offer when it comes to that, should you have something more of a hard adventure. Visas are super easy. It's just an e-visa. This is what the page looks like. Clients apply, single entry, $50. You pay online. It takes 3 days to process. Visas are on hold at the moment, like most places in the world. Myanmar is partially open to domestic tourism, but when everything comes back and running can't be soon enough, this is how the clients will get it. It's by far the best and easiest way. Flights and transport. Now, Myanmar is quite different than other places in Southeast Asia, where there are much less flight connections and international connections. So 95% of international connections are going to go into Yangon, but there are also a few to Mandalay. And then there are some regional connections. This list may seem like a lot, but I assure you it's not anything you know, incomparable to places like Bangkok and Hanoi. So there are only a few connections. And one thing I also did just want to point out on there is it is a little bit different to travel when you're combining other regions. As you can see, you mostly have to fly into Yangon. So you can't, for example, just get a flight from, you know, Bangkok to Bagan or Vietnam to Bagan or straight into Inle Lake. It just doesn't quite work like that. So it's just an important thing to point out, and that's why it's less common to see trips with Myanmar like with one stop, like you'll see with Indochina, where you combine Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, because the flights are a little bit more restrictive and you have to flight via Yangon or Mandalay to get into the Inle Lake and Bagan regions, that's why typically Myanmar is done as more of a standalone destination where you do visit multiple places within the country rather than easily tacking on one area like Bagan or Inle Lake. It is a little bit more complicated when it comes to logistics. On the FIT side, if you ever needed help with that, just give me a ring. But it's just one important thing to know and I wanted to point out. These are literally what all of their planes look like. It's the French-Italian ATR turboprop planes, and all of their regional carriers have this particular plane. So you have an idea what it looks like. Their configurations are either 40 seats or 70 seats. And in Myanmar, it's still all one class. So no business class, all the same standard seats. Some might have, some kind of like premium ticket, but not really yet in Myanmar. So it's, all one class, a pretty standard flight, but any of these flights in the region are going to be very, very short. I showed you the map before. Distances might be short, but please know that all of the ways to get around in Myanmar between most of these regions are still going to be short flights. One thing I wanted to point out on transportation as well is we'll go through some river options, which is quite popular, but the roads are not wildly reliable. Short flights is definitely the way to go. And just really one important thing also I wanted to point out is the drive times on Google Maps for Myanmar are absolutely unreliable. So, in some of the less developed regions of the world, that is the case, and that's definitely the case in Myanmar. So please do keep that in mind. If Google Maps says 4 hours to drive somewhere, you typically have to almost double it in Myanmar. So very, very unreliable. Weather. So it really is a year-round destination, but there are some things to be aware of. So October through February is considered the best time of year. That's the high season, cool and dry. When I say cool, it is still hot. It's hot year-round, but it does cool off quite a bit at night. So it can get 50s, 60s in some cases in the middle of the night. So that's kind of the coldest it gets in Myanmar. It starts heating up quite a bit in March through May, but no rain yet. So that's why it's hot and dry, a little bit dusty that time of year. Then June through September, green season, that's when the rain falls, but it is a lot more lush, if you will. So a lot of pros and cons, for any month of the year that you travel. So it is still very possible to travel low season if clients don't mind rain. There's a lot of hotel availability, a lot of lower rates and fewer tourists, but rain will come with it. Some more things on seasonality. I already mentioned the time of year with the hotel rooms. You do have to plan again in the high season once things pick back up. Like I mentioned, that dry season, by the time February through April comes, it does get a little bit dry and dusty. It's just important to know. And then just know from July to September, that's the rainiest of the rain. Cruising in Myanmar, this also has a lot to do with the weathers. The most popular cruises are between Bagan and Mandalay, but there is another river for cruising called the Chinwin River in Myanmar. Now, the water levels greatly depend on the itineraries, the touring you do, and if you can sail or not. So do keep in mind that clients cannot sail all times of the year, particularly from April through September. That's when the water levels are lowest. Even when the rain picks up, it has dried up quite a bit by the end of the dry season, so just keep that in mind. And now we're just going to briefly run through the cruise options so you can get an idea of what they look like. This is a luxury deluxe option called the Strand Cruise, 24-hour, personal butler service, pool, spa. You can see they're very nice. And this does the 3-night and 4-night option from Bagan to Mandalay, 27 cabins. All food and drinks are included on these types of cruises. This is the Heritage Line, another luxury deluxe cruise. Very well-known brand in Asia. This one is a little bit more traditional in decor. It does the 4-night and 7-night and 11-night option, both on the Irrawaddy and the Chinwin rivers, 23 cabins, and again, all inclusive. You can see the pool and sunbeds on the top, so very, very nice. The sanctuary Ananda, that's the name of another famous temple in Myanmar, but another great option. As you can see, they're all boutique luxury river cruises, so these compete quite closely with one another. They're honestly all quite good options. This one has 21 cabins, everything included. And then the BELMOND has actually been there for quite some time, so it's a little bit more of a iconic ship, and it does the 4-night Mandalay to BAGAN, and it also has the longer Chinwin River cruises, and this one's slightly larger. Not as much bells and whistles as the other options, because it is a little bit older, but 46 cabins, and of course you have the BELMOND name that people are familiar with. And then more of your 3-4-star level is the Panda. This has a fleet, you know, not as lush, but really still good for high-end clients as long as are managed properly. But 10 to 30 cabins on the Panda fleet, and it does every, you know, even 2-night cruise options from BAGAN to Mandalay. And your other more mid-range option is the Pau Khan. So you can see all really solid options. This is more of your entry level, but still adequate sizes, adequate outdoor space. And this does 2 to 7 nights on the Irrawaddy as well. So sometimes you have to really sit down and look at the dates and your client's budget, and then kind of do a little bit of a puzzle up what the best option is going to be. One big thing with seasonality too, that's classic in Myanmar, is the ballooning. So I just want to go through that with you. The most famous is on the left, where you balloon over BAGAN. And then there are actually other places to balloon in Mandalay, NGAPALI, Loy Ka, and INLE. Just want to point out, you can only do it in the high season. So that's specifically in BAGAN from the 7th of October to the 10th of April, so slightly outside of the high season too. That's when you have the least amount of rain, and it's very unlikely to get canceled. The price point is, you know, $350 to $400 per person. So, you know, compared to some other places in the world, it actually is on the more expensive side to do this experience. That's just how much it costs in Myanmar. It's dependent on how many people are in the basket, but it is that iconic experience. If even in the high season, if it was not good weather, your clients will get back all of their money, of course. Excuse me. And then we're just going to go through what's called the Myanmar Big Five. So that's Yangon, Mandalay, BAGAN, INLE Lake, and NGAPALI Beach. All right, so first of all, here's your highlights in Yangon. It's the biggest city in Myanmar by far. Like I had mentioned before with the flights, it's where your clients are going to fly in. Most people will do around 2 nights there. If you can squeeze into 3 nights, I would recommend it. It has quite a big variety of things to do. It's where the best restaurants by far are in Myanmar. It has the SHWE Pagoda, which is the most iconic religious site in Myanmar. And Myanmar used to be ruled by the British, so it does have the colonial downtown with all the British architecture, and you can go on touring around that. It's definitely by far has the most contemporary history. It has a really cool circle train. The best place by far in Myanmar for foodie tours, and there's a lot of social enterprises like handicraft, local markets, and some really cool other things. So you have to make sure your clients have enough time to recover from jet lag, but again, they'll really be able to, in this city, have a contrast of the old and the new, a blend of the people and the culture. So it runs at a little bit slower pace than some other capitals, but definitely a lot to see and a lot to do. Just to go through a few of the more popular properties in Yangon, there is quite a selection these days. The BELMOND Governor's Residence, 49-room, classic 5-star traditional architecture. So really good for luxury travelers who don't mind paying a little bit more of a premium. SULE Shangri-La, still a top, more kind of 4.5-star, 4-star option. It is one of the larger properties, but very good location, you know, very good value, so adequate for couples and families. The Strand, more classic luxury. I would say I prefer this slightly to the BELMOND, 26 rooms, brand new refurbish, perfect location, historic property. So, you know, this would be, in my opinion, the best default for high-enders. And then going slightly down a level, 264 rooms, the CHATRIUM. You know, it is on the larger side, but it is, you know, has a really nice range of facilities and really good quality for that mid to upper range, including groups or families. The Pan Pacific, slightly below the CHATRIUM, 336 rooms. Again, this is another new hotel in Myanmar. So again, good value, really nice range of facilities. And then moving on to BAGAN. This is typically what people think of the most when they think about where they want to go in Myanmar. So it's, you know, BAGAN with all the temples is a new UNESCO heritage site. So your highlights are going to be exploring the ancient temples. You can do this by car, bike, horse-drawn cart. It's a nice way to kind of switch up the touring. BAGAN is on the Irrawaddy River, so, you know, if the clients don't have time to do the cruises that we went through or the budget, they can still do day touring and take a sunset cruise. Perhaps you can skip this option if the clients will be going to Mandalay on the cruise. But there's tons of lacquerware, like we went through ballooning, and then Mount Popa and Salesh you should have in your back pocket as a default day trip that your clients can do as well. And the picture to the right is Mount Popa. So it's a really cool, interesting site, kind of unique to Myanmar that you see there. Just one quick thing I want to point out as well is it sounds like a lot of temples, but as you can see, what we've gone through so far is there's quite a range. So it's just really important to point out to clients that yes, there are temples all over Myanmar, even especially BAGAN, but a lot of it is, you know, you're not kind of going through temples all day, every day. It's certainly a mix-up of different activity, modes of transportation, and types of touring that you can do in between. Just to give you an idea of BAGAN accommodation, BAGAN Lodge is a, you know, 5-star 82-room property right outside of New BAGAN. I think it's a little bit strange, the architecture. It's almost like African safari tents, as you can see from the bottom pages. But I mean, the property gets fantastic feedback, and you can see, you know, the nice range of facilities and amenities at the property. So good for high-end groups and families. This property is my personal favorite, slightly a lower price point, so more that 4-star level. It's right in Old BAGAN, classic boutique, but really good service. It's a responsible hotel, so they do quite a lot with plastic and waste reduction and everything like that. The AMATA Garden Resort is, again, a slightly lower level, so a good, more entry 4-star. So it's in New BAGAN, new property. Again, nice range of facilities. This one's slightly larger at 122 rooms. And then this is ideal for budget FIT, 40 rooms, good location, good feedback. All right, for Mandalay, now Mandalay is the second largest city in Myanmar. Now it is known for its royal capitals, and it has quite a bit of interesting sights to see. I would say even more so than BAGAN, I would say Mandalay is a little bit more focused on the temples and the ancient sites. So if your clients aren't interested as much into that, I would say this would be the only place to skip on a highlight tour. Because it's hard to kind of advise your clients when there's just so many sites and so many temples. But as you can see, the main things, you know, Mandalay Hill is a stunning vantage point. The Kothoda Pagoda. It's the world's biggest book. And then Ava and Amanpura and Saging is the old royal capitals, along with Mingun, and quite a bit when it comes to like the monasteries and everything like that. So quite a bit to see. Typically, you need around 2 nights in Mandalay. If you're taking one of the longer cruises, sometimes that acts as a floating hotel as well. So it's just dependent on the client's itinerary, but a lot of, it's more historical, the stop in Mandalay. To give you an idea of the properties, this is my favorite by far, the Red Canal. It's 4-star, boutique, classic architecture, only 26 rooms, so it fills up very, very fast. Quite small rooms, but, quintessential perfect boutique property in my opinion. Then the Mercer, a lot bigger of a room, but it does have, a really nice range of amenities. So good for both 4 or 5-star groups, families, couples. Then more of your 4-star level, the Haven is a newer property, so good for small groups and FITs, only 45 rooms still. And then last, this is good for more budget FITs and groups, 77 rooms if you want something more entry level, but really good location and a decent range of amenities. All right, Inle Lake is, you shouldn't send a client to Myanmar without recommending and making sure they go to Inle Lake. It contrasts significantly to the other places in Myanmar. It's not a city. It's beautiful, surrounded by mountains, so you absolutely make sure your clients go if they're visiting this country. The main highlight, you have these one-legged rowers and the floating villages. It's all very traditional. There are some temples and sites around it, but in my opinion, the highlight of Inle Lake is the local tribes, the local life, and just more of that serene kind of lake atmosphere. It's good for foodies. There's some cool like cooking classes, and perfect. This area is what's called the Shan countryside. So it's the best for adventure as well. There's multiple day treks, a lot of cycling. So you have a huge range of things to do in this particular area. To give you an idea of what the hotels look like, this is as modern as it gets in Inle Lake. This is the brand new Sofitel. It's absolutely beautiful, don't get me wrong. It's a little bit different of a property, but it has 98 rooms. And if you have clients that are looking for that resort feel and like the modern and really just want, quality, then this is a great option for them. This is, as you can see, this is a little bit more common of what you get in Inle Lake. This is still a deluxe property, but only 27 rooms, and it is definitely a lot more traditional in its style and architecture. So you have a lot more properties that look like this. This is my personal favorite, the Villa Inle. So great for honeymooners or older couples, and perfect for end of the trip. SANCTUM INLE, this is a little bit more Mediterranean design. This is one of the highest rated properties, 93 rooms. So really nice, very luxurious, really good for high-end clients, good for families as well. And then this is your kind of 4-star property, but as you can see, it's still more of the traditional design, standalone villas along the lake. So really good for mid-range to luxury FIT, and still fine for groups because it has 118 rooms. And then this is another example of a good more entry level. This is 154 rooms, mid-range FIT or group, but really nice range of amenities here. And then SHWE is the town that's next to Inle Lake. So all the properties I just showed you are on the lake itself. So it's a bit more serene, a bit more, removed, if you will. And that's, in my opinion, the best part about it. But if you do have clients that actually feel the need to be connected and in town and want somewhere to walk, they would stay in NYAUNG, which is the town next to Inle Lake. So this is just an example of a property, and there's a few more. But typically they're less expensive as well, because you're not paying for all the logistics to get the properties out into the lake, more in a more remote area. All right, last but not least, I just wanted to go through Napoli Beach. Pretty easy to get to, a short flight from Yangon or some other areas. It is one of the more authentic beach areas in Southeast Asia, you know, and a lot of places in neighboring Thailand or nearby Vietnam or Indonesia. A lot of the places can be a bit more built up, but Napoli is still quite pristine. So keep that in mind. There is some snorkeling and dive spots. Napoli Beach is only good for October to April only due to the rainy season. So this is not, there are distinct microclimates, and Yangon and Napoli gets a lot more rain than the plains of Bagan and Mandalay. So it's an absolute no-sell in the low season. So October to April only. And just some examples of properties here. This is kind of your default deluxe properties. Been there a while, you know, on a great stretch of beach, 59 rooms, you know, excellent service at this property with a great range of amenities. This is also a really responsible hotel because they do like a state training staff program and medical clinic and a lot of local work as well. This is another deluxe property, slightly below the last one I just showed you, 32 rooms, ideal for couples, older clients. The rooms don't have stairs, so really good option. Dande Beach Hotel is more of your 3-4 star levels, 70 rooms, you know, not a much lower price point, but really good value for money, so more good for budget FIT or group. This is a slightly newer, slightly fresher, but similar price point. Just a little bit bigger property, so 86 rooms, but really solid, has had really good feedback so far. And then what's new in Myanmar? This isn't particularly new, but I just wanted to point out the MERGUI archipelago. There's some really cool new cruises and new properties, and perhaps after the current state of events, it could become even more popular, considering that clients might be looking outside of cities and perhaps some crowded temple sites, or they might not care as much about the big events going on. So this area is absolutely gorgeous. There's 3 main boats called Burma Boating, Sea Gypsy, and the MERGUI Princess that does sailing around this area. So just have it in the back of your head if you ever have a really discerning client who's been other places in Southeast Asia looking for something different. This product is amazing. They have these new resorts here. One is called the YANGON Resort. I want to say it's around 2 years old, but this particular resort, it only has 13 rooms. It's deluxe. It's quite a high price point. It's like luxury glamping, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So it's more for people that, you know, want to pay for something different and secluded and adventurous. They need to be a nature lover, but some really, really cool product over here. And here's another new resort. It's you know, this one has a minimum stay of 3 nights, I believe. And it's around 250 per person per night, so much lower than the last place I showed you, but 24 rooms. And it's on, you know, more of a remote tropical island in the area I showed you on the map. So great for beach lovers looking for a remote paradise, so high-end honeymooners looking for something different, so keep that in mind. And then this is your kind of bungalow style, but still adequate property, the Boulder Bay. It's, of course, an eco resort, so standard, more basic, but it's still, in this particular property, it'd be, you know, someone looking more for this area and still looking for something different and off the beaten path. So that's kind of what's new in Myanmar, and then some responsible travel bits. In places like Myanmar, it's really, really important. We have a very important ethos code that's on here, and I'll get more into it. We have around 35 experiences and 7 full tours, and we rate our tours based on kind of different responsibility points, whether it's carbon friendly, cultural interaction, social impact, making difference, or local benefits. You can find this all on our website, which I'll show you in a sec. But it's just important to know it can be really cool to mention this to your clients. If clients were going to do a tour anyway, and then you can say, hey, our local partners, you know, rate this as making a difference because of X, Y, Z. It's a nice little point to have. So this is something we're already doing, and just keep that in mind, because it's likely that if you were to plan a trip to Myanmar, a lot of the tours would already incorporate this, and then we can give you some talking points and selling points. We do quite a bit, and these are our projects in Myanmar. Just a few things I really briefly wanted to point out is, you know, we basically do quite a bit with NGOs. We're Travel Life certified and we're Child Safe certified. So we get a lot of requests, and we know people mean well when they ask this, but we do get quite a lot of requests for people looking to visit schools or orphanages or anything like that. And one reason why this child safe movement is so important is we don't do any sort of orphanage visits, no school visits. By the way, these things are all completely illegal in our country, in US, Canada, and Europe, because it does have really bad effects on children. So if your clients ever request anything and we say, no, our team should certainly be able to thoughtfully explain why, but it's all about the why. And I just want you to know that there are very good alternatives that we can provide, and a lot will have, you know, are listed on this page. So just keep that in mind. It's all about responsibility and explaining and advising to clients why certain things can or cannot be done, and always offering really good alternatives, whether it be NGOs or other projects that we work with, depending on what they're interested in. All right, so for safety, political situation in Myanmar, the darn COVID virus has certainly taken headlines. So we haven't heard about, you know, any political issues in Myanmar for a while in mainstream media, and I don't know if it will come back at all. You know, just to be completely honest, there has been conflict, border conflict, and issues in Myanmar for quite a long time. And, you know, as a DMC who's been there for quite a long time, we have seen, you know, travel trends or, you know, inquiries or people booking kind of directly correlated to just how much the media is reporting it, whether it's happening or not. And just the answer to that is it's been happening the whole time, whether people come or not. And, you know, one thing I just wanted to speak to is in that, you know, someone who's traveled to Myanmar multiple times, it's one of my favorite countries in the world, is, you know, we would never send clients anywhere that are unsafe. All of the areas we talked about with Myanmar, it's such a peaceful, safe country. There are some border areas that are still kind of on the cusp, and you would never go there really, and tourists don't go there, and we would never send anyone anywhere that was unsafe. So in terms of the responsibly sending clients and people to Myanmar, we think it would be irresponsible not to. We think it's really important for tourists to have some sort of positive influence, and, you know, make sure you're working with local partners that you know where the money is going, and supporting kind of like the local projects and the properties that we talked about on this. So if you want any more info on kind of what to say when talking to your clients of why, you know, people should go, just give me a call or shoot me an email. I'd be happy to chat through it with you, but it all comes back to the most important thing, which is giving back, you know, to the country, to the tourism for their livelihoods, and making sure that, you know, your clients participate in these tours that give back directly to these communities. So that's just the really most important sticking point on there. And what would 2020 be without a COVID-19 update? So I just put a link on there. We have one, it will cover all of our destinations. Myanmar just kind of is opening up to domestic tourism right now. So we expect it, we don't have any news yet, but please do click on that link. I can send everyone the presentation, and we look forward to getting it updated when travel is back to normal. So last but not least, we have this travel trade. So any of the tours, hotels, information we went through, it's literally all on our website. You can even download it with example pricing. So if you're not already set up and want to be, just shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to get you going there. All right, if you think of any more questions, just go ahead and send them to my email, but I will get everyone the presentation, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.